What's going on, everybody? Happy hour. Happy Friday. Welcome in to this happy hour edition of the Pack a Day podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Andy Herman. So glad to be back. A couple weeks ago, I think was our last one. So it's been far too long already. Kind of an unexpected week. We obviously had a lot going on early in the week with the NFL league meetings, some kick return changes, a new kicker for Green Bay. Obviously, Goody and Matt and Mark Murphy all spoke this week. And then, the Brazil news, we still haven't heard anything. We sort of were expecting, I think, maybe end of the week. Maybe it'll get announced as we're talking today. If we do, definitely let me know if we get that notification. Some NFL news, of course, Hassan Reddick traded today. Obviously helps Aaron Rodgers' Jets, helps Green Bay too. Anytime you get to see a player like Hassan Reddick, who has really sort of tore the league apart from a pass rush standpoint over the course of the past 2-3 seasons, go from the NFC to the AFC. That's certainly beneficial for Green Bay as well. So very interesting week, sort of out of nowhere, but hope this week was great for you guys. Hope your March Madness brackets are doing well. Brewers win today, which was awesome for those in Wisconsin who are Brewers fans. If not, well, I apologize. And of course, from a Wisconsin standpoint, huge game with Marquette tonight as well. So should be a fun sports weekend, but we've got a lot of Packers stuff to talk about. So let's jump into it right away. Per usual, we'll try to get through as many questions as I possibly can through the course of an hour. And I know super chats will obviously go to the top. Try to get to as many member chats as I can as well, but we'll jump in right away. And Shane, thank you so much for the super chat to start things off today. Glad to see him show up on your short list this morning, Andy. But what if Amarius Mims and Caleb Jones just have the Monstars out there on the line? I don't know if Amarius Mims, he didn't do the short shuttle and the 3-cone, at least last I checked. That's something that Green Bay values quite a bit. Now, depending on where they're taking people, right? Like Caleb Jones, mostly Caleb Williams. Caleb Jones obviously was not like somebody who at that size was going to do agility testing well, but as an undrafted free agent, they don't care about that as much. They're just going to try to find a football player. And so far, he's lasted on the roster for 2 seasons. And this is by the way, a low-key offseason for Caleb Jones. Like it's now or never. Like you got 2 redshirt seasons on the 53-man roster and have not done anything. That's not a bad thing. They did the same thing with Josh Nijman. They also did the same thing with Alex Light. And Josh Nijman turned out and became a swing tackle for a few seasons. And then Alex Light did not, and he got cut. So this is sort of that line of demarcation, though, of like, hey, it's now or never. The line in the sand maybe is a better term, but he needs to put up this offseason. Hopefully he will. They definitely need the depth along the offensive line, and he'll have a great opportunity to make the team. But as far as Mims goes, his athletic profile, simply because from an agility standpoint, which they value a ton, it might not be on Green Bay's radar. It's tough to say, but we don't have that athletic testing for him. But Green Bay, I'm sure, does in some capacity, and I'm sure has somebody at the University of Georgia that they feel good talking to. They've certainly taken a lot of players from Georgia in the past, but Mims is a player I like a ton. Obviously, he's had some injury issues. Obviously, he hasn't had a ton of overall tape to evaluate, specifically this past year. The overall production has been minimal, but my goodness, there's a little bit of Tristan Wirfs to his game. Such a natural right tackle. Like this is one of those players, and I talk about this from time to time, where what you always want to try to find is a player that just looks like they were born to play the position and born to play the sport. Amarius Mims looks like he was born to play right tackle. And those are always like the ones where you're like, you're willing to give all the benefit of the doubt. And then his tape, like even in minimal playing time, was really, really good as well, which is super exciting. There weren't a ton of flaws in his game for me. And I know there's obviously some technique stuff that he still needs to clean up, but he's a really fun prospect. But yeah, I'm just, even as an aside to that, I'm a pretty big believer in big physical offensive tackles and these guys that are a little bit wider and a little bit harder to get around. If you've got good athleticism, which Mims does overall, like his speed for his size is incredible. Obviously his RAS score is well over 9. Like he's going to be a very fun prospect. Now, if he's there for Green Bay at 25, we'll have to wait and see. And there are some question marks, but man, if we get to draft day and we're doing the live stream here, which yes, there will be a live draft stream on days 1 and 2 of the draft for sure. And we hear Amarius Mims pop up at pick 25, you will hear no complaints from me whatsoever. Now, I do think Mims can probably play some left tackle as well, but you do end up with some question marks then as to where you want to play him, right? Because he's just such a natural right tackle. And then you get into that whole conversation of, all right, what do you want to do with Zach Tom? And it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Like Zach Tom does have the ability to play a variety of different positions, but Zach Tom is playing right tackle so well and is just really dominated that spot that it's so tough to want to move him and maybe even risk any sort of setback whatsoever. But at the same time, you can have him compete really with everyone else on the line. Who's your weakest link? If it's Rasheed Walker at left tackle, well, guess what? Zach Tom's your new left tackle. If it's Josh Myers at center, guess what? Zach Tom's your new center. If it's Sean Ryan at right guard, guess what? Zach Tom's your new right guard. And I think he'll be fine no matter where he goes. But those are the sort of decisions that, Green Bay is going to have to go through. But I'm a big fan of Mims and excited to see where he ends up in the draft. Mirko, thank you so much for the super chat as well. I just want to say thank you for the great content you and your team are putting out on a daily basis. Thanks to the time difference, I can usually enjoy your newest episode during my lunch break. Mirko, tell me in the chat where you're from. I'd love to know. But you are more than welcome. This is a labor of love. I am beyond blessed to be able to get to do this every single day. And, just getting to today, I was, as you may have saw on Twitter, I'm going through some of the unknown players on the roster, the Ellis Merriweathers of the world, and the, Jeff Wilson, or is it Jeff Wilson? I'm already forgetting his name because I'm really bad at it. But who did I watch today? I watched Joel Wilson, excuse me, and then Thyrick Pitts as well. Like just even getting to watch some of the back of the roster players and make some evaluations. And we'll go in a much deeper episode with some of those guys tomorrow. At least that's the plan right now. Just doing all that stuff is amazing. And then getting to have an incredible team of podcasters that do this every single day. And just a really quick aside for anyone that wants a peek behind the curtain. When I first put this together and I put together a team of 20 plus people and decided to do a 365 day a year podcast, like an insane person, my thought was, this is great. What's going to end up happening is, people are going to bail on me all the time and say, oh, I forgot to do an episode. And then I'm going to have to 2 a.m. or something, record a last minute episode. I say this all the time, but I think I've done 1 or 2 episodes as a last minute episode in the entire 2,000 plus days that we've been doing this. It's a team of amazing people. I'm beyond blessed to have them on board as well and be so supportive of the podcast. And then, of course, amazing people like yourselves. So I appreciate it, Mirko, but it is a beyond joy on my side as well. All right, Bremen, how you doing, buddy? In some years, all our offense will become much more expensive. So there will be the necessity to draft new wide receivers in 1 year and new tight ends in 2 years, right? Impossible to give them all new, I'm assuming new contracts is what we're talking about here. Yeah, in all likelihood, we'll see what happens with the salary cap and we'll see what players that they want to keep. These will be interesting discussions that we can have in 2-3 years, or, probably 2-3 years from now, as some of these players start to become unrestricted free agents. They'll have undoubtedly decisions to make with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton and all those guys as time goes on. Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft will, become free agents at the same time. My overarching take on that at this point is it is a phenomenal problem to have. If teams want to keep their own players, far more often than not, they're able to keep their own players. Now you have to make tough decisions. We saw that this offseason. It's no different. Releasing David Bakhtiari and more specifically releasing Aaron Jones. Those things are going to consistently happen. And they're going to have difficult decisions to make down the road as to which players that they want to keep. But the cream will rise to the top and they'll be able to keep who they ultimately want to keep. And if that's Wicks and Reed, they'll keep Wicks and Reed. If it's Watson and Dobbs, or Dobbs and Wicks, or Dobbs and Reed, or Reed and Melton, or whichever ones, and maybe it's a Musgrave or a Kraft. But that's also the reason why when you have a really strong draft class like this and you have 11 draft picks through the course of that draft, you don't just say no to a wide receiver no matter what. It's a tough conversation to have because you have probably 7 or 8 guys that are capable of making a 53-man roster, and you've got 5, if not 6 guys that are ready to be contributors right now. So taking another wide receiver is tough, but you can figure out that roster math when it comes to 53-man cutdowns. And with the ability to call up practice squad players, if you have to rob another position of depth so that you can keep some of those super talented wide receivers, you do so. Same thing at tight end. You can do that. You just have to call up players from the practice squad to sort of fill out your game day roster. But Green Bay has shown no hesitancy in doing so and paying a little extra to call up those guys from the practice squad. So it gives you a lot more flexibility, and you grab good players now and you figure out the rest later. But yes, they will have some difficult decisions to make down the road. But I guarantee you, Goody will continue to draft wide receivers. They'll continue to draft tight ends. They'll continue to develop players, even if it's guys on the practice squad. They'll do that over and over and over and over. And they've shown a propensity to find those good players throughout the draft and free agency as well. So the thing is, right now, they're in a very, very good spot. And that's exactly the spot that you want to be in. John, thank you so much for the chat. I hope they will either draft highly rated offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, safety players, or trade some of the draft picks for established high-level O-line, D-line, linebacker, safety players. Go Pack, go. I think you can probably mostly rule the second part out. If they are going to trade for a player, and I sort of did my big trade breakdown of like 10 guys they could trade for, I did throw I had Hassan Reddick on there as like a very unlikely, but like it was more of like a let's talk about how this would look sort of thing. Obviously, he's off the list. I threw a Patrick Surtain on there. I don't think Denver's going to really entertain trading Patrick Surtain unless it's an offer that blew them away so that they could go get a quarterback. But those are sort of my, all right, pie in the sky sort of let's just kind of have fun with the discussion sort of thing. But everyone else on that list was like, a Channing Tindall was was a backup, linebacker who hasn't got their opportunity yet. That's going to cost like a day 3 selection and is going to be super cheap against your salary cap. I think more likely than not, Chad Muma is another one from the Jaguars, former 3rd-round pick who just hasn't had a ton of opportunities. I think more likely than not, if they're going to make a player trade, it's probably something like that, where you're getting a flyer player that you can take a chance on, and it's going to cost you a day 3 pick, and you go about it that way. That being said, I very much expect them to attack aggressively, offensive line, defensive line, maybe not defensive line as much, but offensive line, linebacker, and safety for sure will be attacked aggressively in the draft. Running back probably as well. So I think you're going to get your wish on the first side of things. I don't think you're probably going to get your wish on the second side of things for highly established players. But Green Bay is going to have options. They're going to have the ability to move up and down the draft board as needed. And they have 5 picks in the top 100. And don't be surprised if a lot of those 5 picks in the top 100 are offensive line, linebacker, safety, some of their positions of need as well. And there's definitely some good names out there that they can acquire that would definitely be able to help Green Bay right out of the box, specifically in the box as a safety, no pun intended. All right, Cheddarhead, thank you for the chat. I got my eyes on Peyton Wilson, inside linebacker from NC State. Well, my friend, do I have amazing news for you? Peyton Wilson, scouting report just went up seconds ago. Well, I guess minutes ago now, from Ross Uglum. So today's daily draft episode, a little bit later than normal. My apologies for that, but is on Peyton Wilson. So awesome breakdown today from Ross Uglum. You are going to want to check that out as soon as we are done here. That just went up at like 3:58 p.m. right before I hopped on this. All right, Mirko, thanks again. Switzerland, back in September, a dream come true by attending a season opener at Soldier Field. Was my first live Packers game. Loved it. That was a great game to go to as well. Switzerland, definitely on my very high list of places to go. I was in Italy and went to Northern Italy and went to Bellagio and up in that area. So not far away. I think one train away, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so I definitely like that entire area is just like the most breathtaking thing in the world. So definitely very much on my high list of I'd love to get back in, specifically in that Switzerland side of things. So probably not many. I'm going to Vancouver in Canada this upcoming June. But yeah, that area is definitely high on my list. So if I do go, Mirko, I will let you know, and at minimum, pick your brain on where to go, and maybe even see if I do get there, if we can, meet up for a beer or something. Most Hated Minnesotan, you are the best. I see you on the comments, and you've obviously been a Hall of Fame member for forever. So thank you so much. Glad you can catch live today. I always miss these due to work. Question: if you had to guess, what positions do the Packers take with the top 3 picks? Keep up the great work, man. Thanks for all you do. Yeah, if I were betting today, if you checked out today's episode, I'm going to say that they very much take an offensive lineman in round 1. It's not a set in stone. I think there will be a linebacker and probably a corner or two that they very much consider at that spot as well. But if I were a betting man today, I would say corner. And then I think that round 2 very easily could be the linebacker safety combo. I could easily see them, and it just depends where, somebody like an Edgerrin Cooper goes. But like a dream draft for me, if they could get offensive line round one. And then, if they could somehow get like an Edgerrin Cooper, even if they had to move up a little bit with that first, second round pick, and then like, Jaden Hicks in round two and sort of double up there and add a bunch of speed and athleticism into the box of their defense, like, that would be a dream draft for me. So I'll say offensive line, linebacker, safety, or maybe offensive line, safety, linebacker would be my guess, but they have options. I don't know that they're going to go running back quite that high, specifically with just investing a little bit of money in Josh Jacobs, but they could. I don't think they go wide receiver. They're certainly unlikely to go quarterback. They could double up on offensive line. That's a possibility. There's definitely going to be corners in that situation where they could very much look at corners. Obviously, a Cooper DeJean in round one, whether he's viewed as a corner or a safety, well within the realm of possibility. So they're going to have great options is my belief here. Also, don't be surprised if Good is aggressive in either moving up those second round picks and getting better players, utilizing maybe those third round picks to do so, or maybe even combining those 2 third round picks to try to get a third second round pick. I think he wants to be aggressive, and I think he wants to target players that can, again, fit everything that they're looking for, that can come in and help right now, because this is a team that's ready to compete right now, but also fit the timeline. And if he can get, 4 top end prospects out of this by utilizing those third round picks if needed, I don't think he's going to be afraid to do so, knowing that he's still going to have some picks on day 3 where he can fill in the gaps if need be. So that'd be my guess right now. But again, a ton of possibilities. All right, let's see. Richard, in past drafts, there were certain draft prospects that scream Packers prototype. Zach Tom, Lucas Van Ness. Are there any prospects in this year's draft that scream potential Packer? Richard, I will have. Last year, I did the 30. I think I did like the 30 most likely Green Bay Packers as an episode prior to the draft. I think it was 30. Either way, I did like most likely Packers. Maybe it was 20, whatever it was. I will do an episode this year that is labeled the same thing, the most likely players that the Packers pick in the draft that just scream Green Bay Packer. So we'll definitely, and there were definitely some that got taken. I'd have to go back and listen to it, but I know there were some that got taken from that list. And we'll do that again this year for sure. In the first round, I talked about this. Sorry, I just want to bring up my draft notes here. Should have had it up. My apologies, guys. But I definitely talked about this a little bit today. One in the members only chat, and then actually might have been the members only episode as well. So that's probably why maybe some of you haven't seen it. But Tyler Guyton is the player to me in the first round. That's the first player that I watched and like did a ton of research on that was just like blaring off the page. This is a Green Bay Packer. A little bit more of a developmental player, screams athleticism and has the super high RAS. Young, big conference, Oklahoma, like it's everything that they sort of look for. Premium position player, position of need. And I think he has versatility along the offensive line as well. I think you could play left or right. I think you could develop him as a tackle or as a guard, move him around as needed. He runs like a tight end. I mentioned this name, and I know it's going to give people PTSD and be super scared. But similarly to how they screwed up Amari Rodgers, but then got Jaden Reed right, this would be their correction for Jason Spriggs. Like a similar style athlete, but I think Guyton's just a better player, a much better player, in fact. And I think where they screwed up Spriggs, I think they have the opportunity to get it right this time with Tyler Guyton. But Guyton has a lot of that athleticism that Jason Spriggs had, but with a much better demeanor, a much better focus, a much better playability. And he's an attacking player. I think sometimes a little bit over aggressive, and he can get him in front of himself and be susceptible to a push-pull. And again, just can kind of be out of control is an aggressive word to say. I don't think he's out of control, but he just gets a little ahead of himself at times, and defenders can use that over aggressiveness against him. But that's very, very teachable. And again, what you don't want to do when you're watching a prospect is say what they are. All of us can look at tape and say, oh, this is what they are. The goal is to say what they're going to become. And that's obviously an impossibility, which is why this is such an inexact science and why players go in the first round and turn into nothing. And, players are taken with the last overall pick and end up the starting quarterback for the 49ers. Like, teams screw this up all the time because it's that difficult. But what you're looking for is a player that projects to be a high-end player at their position. And Tyler Guyton is absolutely that. I don't think he needs a ton of work. I don't think there's a lot of rough edges, but if so, I think, Luke Butkus and company will be able to round him, into that. But that's the first player to me that just like really just screamed off of like, yeah, that's we're staring right at a potential Green Bay Packer. All right, Kevin, from today's video, if all the offensive linemen and Cooper DeJean are there at 25, better to draft DeJean and then move up to get one of the best offensive linemen to secure 2 first-round talents. Within the realm of possibility, absolutely. And we've seen Goody do that before with Darnell Savage. So maybe it could be the other way around, right? Because in that draft, they took Rashawn Gary and then moved up to get Darnell Savage. So maybe they're deciding between the offensive lineman and DeJean at 25, and they take the offensive lineman. And then, they get to pick 29 and Cooper DeJean is still sitting there, something like that. And they're like, all right, we can't sit on this any longer. And that's where they get aggressive and take that first, second round pick and move up and get a second first and take DeJean at that spot. That easily could be something that's within the realm of possibility, assuming DeJean is there at that point. Or it could be vice versa too, right? Maybe they take DeJean at 25 or maybe even move up a little bit for DeJean. And then maybe, again, they get to pick 33, 34, and a Jordan Morgan is still sitting there. And maybe they take that early second and move it up earlier in the second round and grab a Jordan Morgan at that spot. Or maybe it's Tyler Guyton if he's still there at the top of the second. So there's a variety of different ways that this could go. But Cooper DeJean and the offensive line definitely within the realm of conversation. And I think there's a very good chance that they could maybe double up and get 2 players of that caliber and try to help both the offense and the defense very, very early in the draft. All right. Ron, I think similar sort of question here. Who does Goody pick if DeJean, Guyton, and Barton are there at 25 and why? My gut would tell me Guyton. An easy answer might be Barton. And there's a lot of buzz right now. Peter Skoronski is the buzz comp right now. So, Skoronski went, I think, like top 12 a season ago. There seems to be some legitimate buzz that Barton could be like a top 15 pick in this draft. So it could be that if he's at 25, it's just a no-brainer and Goody just takes him. So that's within the realm of possibility. The big thing with Barton is it depends on how Green Bay evaluates him. Green Bay does not take interior offensive line early. They take tackles early, but they do not take interior offensive line early at all. If they view Barton specifically or strictly as an interior offensive lineman, then they probably go more in the DeJean or Guyton paths. But if they view him as a offensive tackle that if it doesn't work out at tackle, they could then move to guard in a need situation, but they evaluate him as an offensive tackle, that's something that I think they could look at, and Barton might be the choice there. But my guess is they probably value the offensive line a little bit more than DeJean at this point. But yeah, I'm going to go Guyton, Barton, and then DeJean probably in that order. But if they view Barton as a true tackle, I would bump him ahead of Guyton in that situation. I think we got another super chat in. Mark, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. And Mirko again, are there any draft prospects you would consider to trade up for in the first round? That's a great question. I don't think that this is a great draft. I'd be more surprised if Green Bay traded up. There's one that I would consider if it were me, and I don't think Green Bay would really do this. One of my guys in this draft very, very early is Jared Verse. I love Jared Verse. I think he's an absolute stud, holds up against the run, big time pass rusher. Like, this is just a guy that's going to be a decade long, really, really, really good defensive end. There's just, I don't know how he misses. Like, he's just too good at everything for him to miss, in my opinion. These are the type of guys that get, the $20 million contracts as soon as they're free agents, and you have the ability to get one. Now, would Green Bay trade up to go get another defensive end when they have Rashawn Gary in a big contract, when they just drafted LVN in the first round? They still have Preston Smith on the roster, and Igbari will come back at some point. They've got a Brenton Cox as a lottery ticket. They don't have that need. That's why it's so tough. If you're going to trade up aggressively in the first round, it's going to be for a premium position, right? You're not probably doing it for just anything. So, like, what would they trade? Like, who are the players you would trade up for? Well, it would be a quarterback, but Green Bay doesn't need a quarterback very clearly. You could go after one of the top wide receivers, but Green Bay has no need for a top wide receiver and specifically to give up a bunch of draft capital to move up to get one of those top wide receivers. So that does, and it's a really deep wide receiver class anyway. So that doesn't really make sense. Brock Bowers could be somebody that in a normal situation, not a premium position, but maybe they viewed him as a premium player, but you've got Musgrave and Kraft. So that doesn't make sense. Some of the offensive linemen will very much go that early in the draft and you could consider trading up for, but it's one of the most rich, deep offensive line classes in the first to early second round that we've seen maybe ever. And Green Bay is going to be in a great position to take one of the top offensive linemen without having to move up. So I don't see that. The defensive linemen, I don't know, like one, it's just possible that, Murphy and Newton are there. I don't think Murphy fits their thresholds anyway, and it's more likely that Newton is there. So I don't think there's a defensive lineman they move up for. There's obviously not an off-ball linebacker or a safety that they move up for. Edge would be like the one, right? And that's where I talk about like a Dallas Turner, a Jared Verse, Latu from UCLA. Could they go up and get one of those guys? Those would, in a normal situation, probably be the guys that they would maybe target. But again, you just drafted LVN, and you've got Rashawn Gary in a long-term contract now, Preston and Igbari, we just talked about Brenton Cox. So they don't really have that need there. And there's a decent chance that you could also still find a decent edge rusher at pick 25, even if you did want to go in that direction. And then that brings you to corner. I think corner would be the interesting one. Is it possible that they really like one of the corners? Is it Quinyon Mitchell a possibility? Sure, that could be one, but I think Mitchell would be more of one where they move up, like maybe he gets to like 21 or 22 and Green Bay really likes him and they want to get from 25 to 21 or 22. It's like maybe a future third or maybe like a fourth and a fifth to get up or something like that. Not anything super aggressive. The one that to me would be the most interesting would be Terrion Arnold. Now, I don't love Terrion Arnold, but he's a really good player and he would fit in Green Bay incredibly well. And he would give you the versatility to play inside or outside. Great cover corner, man cover skills, can play exactly in that Jeff Hafley style of defense. The thought of having Jair and Arnold on the field at the same time is really, really fun. And the cool thing is if your best corners are Nixon and Arnold, you can go Jair, Arnold, and Nixon. If it's Valentine and Arnold, you can go Jair, Valentine, and Arnold. If it's Stokes and Arnold, you can go Jair, Stokes, and Arnold. Like he brings that versatility to play inside or outside to put your best 3 or 4 corners on the field in nickel or dime when you're playing it. And that would be the one. Now, where does he need to get for Green Bay to consider it? If Arnold gets to 18 and Green Bay loves him and thinks he is that perfect fit, that would be maybe something where I think they could consider. So I don't think this is a trade up draft for Green Bay. I would be far more, I'd be the most surprised if you told me today that they traded up in round 1. That is to me the most surprising situation for Green Bay. I think the most likely is probably that they stay, and maybe equally as likely that they move back, and probably least likely, in my opinion, that they move up. But Terrion Arnold would be one that potentially to keep an eye on if he started to fall for non-off-field reasons at the last minute or something, and Green Bay really liked him. That would be the name that I think maybe they could be targeting. All right. She said, Joey, thanks for the super chat. I don't know if you saw that fake news about uniforms for the Packers. Thoughts if they ever did change their look, at least slightly. This might be controversial on a variety of different ways. My first thing is I really don't care about jerseys all that much at all. I don't care about jersey numbers. I don't care about the aesthetics all that much. It's just not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, if I'm being honest. My second is I want to keep everything the same. If I do have a say in it, or if I did care about it, keep everything the same. I love their jerseys. I love the green. I love the white. I wouldn't change anything. That being said, all of that being said, right now with the throwback jerseys that they have, if you want to go one alternate jersey every season and it's not a throwback, meaning they do something crazy for one game, whether it's an all black or an all white or a different sort of version of the jerseys for one game every season, I think that would be something that would be cool, quite honestly, and I could totally get on board with. I don't ever really want them to change their current jerseys the way that they are. I love them to death, and I don't really want them to change. But for one game a season, if instead of doing a throwback, they did an alternate uni, I'm all on board with that. I think that would be something that would be kind of cool to see, if I'm being honest, and would be such a great marketing thing for the Packers to just do something different. So yeah, I'm very much with like, hey, let's try something different every now and again. It's one game. It's one game. You can try it out, and then next year you get to do a different new uniform design for that one game. I think it'd be cool too if like they did like a fan design contest or something like that. I think there's some really cool stuff that they could do with it, but ultimately, I love them the way that they are. I wouldn't change anything, but for that one game, instead of a throwback, if you want to do an alternate, go for it. I'm all for it. On your same timeline advocacy, wouldn't we have to also then pay everyone big contracts at the same time? Is that an issue? Smash, first of all, thank you so much for the super chat. We did talk about this a little bit at the onset of this conversation or of the chat today. That's a great problem to have. It is a phenomenal. If you have a bunch of players that are really, really great and you need to find a way to pay them, awesome. That's a great, like I said, it's an awesome problem to have. Now, they'll have to make some tough decisions at some point, just like they do every single season. They have to say goodbye to certain players. They trade away Aaron Rodgers. They trade away Devontae Adams. They cut Aaron Jones. These are situations that will come up every single year for the rest of our lives. They're going to see free agents walk. They're going to see players that we love get cut, and all of them will end up with the Minnesota Vikings undoubtedly, because that's what they do. But yeah, we'll get to that when we get there. In the meantime, they have a lot of really young, talented players. The big thing, Smash, is you keep reloading year after year, right? And that's what I mentioned before, is just because they have great receivers now, if there's a great wide receiver that falls to them in round 3, you don't, just say like, wow, we don't really need that. Goody had the great line that Ted Thompson always said earlier this week, or what Goody said earlier this week about Ted Thompson, of you don't know what your needs are going to be 6 months from now. You certainly don't know what your needs are going to be 2-3 years from now. So you keep grabbing good players. And if you have too many of something, you figure it out. You trade a player away for hopefully better capital, and you move on. But those are great problems to have. And more often than not, Green Bay's done a phenomenal job of keeping the players that they need to keep on their team, getting them signed to long-term deals, and keeping them for Green Bay Packers for as long as they want them. All right, where else? What are we at here? Trying to go back to the beginning here. I don't know. You guys are too good with questions. All right, let's see if I can find, try to get some member chats in here. Sorry for the pause here, guys. Packy the Packer, Tyler Guyton, 100%. All good with that. Oh, it looks like most of our questions are from now. Here we go. Donald Jackson, thanks for being a member. I don't think it'd be worth the resources to get Bowers, but I would love to see what Matt LaFleur would develop in play calling, lab, pass, and run with 3 tight ends featuring Musgrave, Kraft, and Bowers. Again, grab good players if you can. If Bowers falls to 25 and he's best player available, go nuts, have fun. But one, that's not going to happen. But at some point, there is some law of diminishing returns, meaning you already are going to struggle. Like, you can have five eligible players on offense, right? You've got Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, your 4 big-time wide receivers, and then you still have a Bo Melton, you still have a Malik Heath. You've got 9 already, and you've got 5 spots that they can go out there. Ben Sims is going to get playing time. So, obviously Dylan's going to get playing time if he makes the team, or whatever backup, whoever ends up being running back number 2. There are a ton of mouths to feed already. And yeah, you know what? It'd be great to have a 3 tight end offense where you can run out there Musgrave, Kraft, and Bowers. That's a really fun lineup. Josh Jacobs in the backfield, Christian Watson at wide receiver as a deep threat. Like, that's really, really fun. But guess what? You now have Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Dobbs, Bo Melton, Malik Heath chilling on the sidelines, doing nothing while that's happening. And again, that's not a bad problem to have, but it's also like, all right, could that same pick have been used as an offensive line or a defensive player who is going to play a bunch of snaps, rather than having to divvy up snaps for the players that you already have that are really good, that you want on the field already? So these are all part of the calculus. These are all part of the decisions that Green Bay will have to make. They'll do a great job of making those decisions, but you also don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and you absolutely take really great players when they're presented to you. So for some reason, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Brock Bowers or one of these guys falls to Green Bay at 25. Yeah, go for it. I always say, though, if Brock Bowers or Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors or somebody like that falls to 25, it's usually because we've got a gas mask situation. And if everyone else passed on him, Green Bay will never be the team that says we'll sign off on him. We'll be the ones to take him, just not in their DNA. So don't get your hopes up too much. All right, Chad, thank you so much for being a member as well. Do you have a middle linebacker or two that you really like yet that fits our defense? The one that I spent a lot of time on so far was Edgerrin Cooper. So I'll spend some time talking about Cooper, and we'll get to obviously a lot of these breakdowns as well. But I watched the first game against Auburn for Edgerrin Cooper, and I'm like, nope, hard pass. Don't want anything to do with it. And there are some, I don't want to say like red flags, but there's some buyer beware sort of things. But listen, he's a freak athlete. You turn on the tape and he looks the part immediately. And you can see the speed, but there are some instinctual things. There are some missed tackle things. There are some coverage things that he is going to have to work on. But I watched that Auburn tape and I'm like, no, I'm good. Let's find somebody else. Then you put on the Alabama tape and you see everything. You see everything you want to see. And again, we're projecting. We're not saying what they are. We're saying what they're going to be. And man, you see that freak athleticism just show up. Blitzing, unbelievable. I think he has 3 sacks in that game. Spying the quarterback. Like he's like, there's also this like ultimate play where he's in one gap, running back runs in another gap. He uses an insane athleticism to get over there so fast that like most linebackers wouldn't get to there as quick as he does, like almost none. But he gets there and then misses the running back because he's so quick to get there and the running back just cuts back on him. Those are things that need to get cleaned up. But you see a play where he gets all the way to the sideline from the middle of the field in like a blink of an eye. Like there's all this stuff that just oozes off the Alabama tape where you're like, oh, okay. Like I'm going to need a second. I need to like rethink this. You put on the LSU tape and you see a lot of the stuff that you saw on the Alabama tape and you're like, all right, this is really good. So what you're looking for a lot of times when you're watching these players are, can they do it? And it might be inconsistent. It might not be every single time, but can they do it? And Edgerrin Cooper has everything on tape that you want from an incredible off-ball linebacker that he can do. Now, some of the consistency, some of the tackling, some of the instincts, and instincts are tough. Instincts are 1A on the list of things that you want. But there are plays on tape that you see him be very instinctual. There's other plays where it takes him a second. So you have to vet that out a little bit. After watching him more and after breaking it down more, I am in on Edgerrin Cooper. I think he's a really good linebacker. I think he's going to be a really good linebacker. And I think if you take what Brian Gutekunst said to heart this week, where he's like, there's no, I'm paraphrasing here very clearly, but there's no Will, there's no Mike, there's no Sam anymore. He's like, we're nickel. There's 2 linebackers and they both have to be able to do everything. They both have to be able to take on blocks. They both have to be able to run sideline to sideline. They both have to be able to cover. And they're like, if you can take, again, I'm paraphrasing here. It was like, you can take, more physical linebacker, but as soon as your linebackers get hurt and you have to play him all the time, well, if he can't cover, you're just going to be screwed. They're going to pick on that guy all day, every day. Or vice versa. If he can't run defend and, now all of your run defense linebackers are out injured and he has to be in the game no matter what. All right, well, you're just screwed. You're not going to run defend and they're going to pick on that guy all day, every day. So you just have to take guys that can do a little bit of everything. And he definitely fits that description. I don't know how well he and Quay would be that like perfect tandem, but I don't know that Goody's looking for that perfect, meaning like, you've got a strong and a more of a fast finesse guy. That's like sometimes an ideal, but that doesn't seem what Goody is really looking for. So, take that for what it's worth, but I'm in, but I do think there are some things on tape that, again, you have to be a little bit careful with and make sure that you're going to be able to teach them to get what you ultimately want out of them, which is hopefully a very good off-ball linebacker. JM, thanks for the super chat. Wow, thank you very much for the super chat. Where do you rank the Packers on the NFL now before the draft? Also, do you want the Packers to take all 11 draft picks? Fan from Saudi Arabia. That's awesome. Thank you so much for checking it out. I'm going to punt a little bit on I don't know if I can punt when you're giving me a $20 super chat here. I have a episode coming out this weekend where I'm going to rank the Packers and do an NFC power rankings. So that's my idea for Sunday's episode right now. So I don't want to give too much away on that, but listen, I'll just put it this way. they have every right to be as competitive as every other team in the NFC and in the NFL right now, in my opinion. We saw that last season, even before they were ready, well before we expected them to be ready. They went out and they beat a Dallas team that never loses in Dallas in the first round of the playoffs. Should have probably beat San Francisco, or at least gave San Francisco everything that they could handle on the road in San Francisco. Again, for a team that's completely inexperienced and not expected to be there at all, they had every opportunity to win that game. They would have went to Detroit and played a Detroit team that they've already beat in Detroit earlier in the season. And then, go against the Kansas City team that they beat early in the season. I'm not saying that path was likely. I'm not saying that they would have gotten through all that. And clearly they didn't. They didn't beat San Francisco. They're right there. And I don't see that changing. They go out and get Xavier McKinney. They go out and get Josh Jacobs. They're going to have 11 draft picks. They're going to have 5 in the top 100. This roster is only getting better. The hope is that a lot of those young players take a step in their progression and with what they're capable of doing and just their experience. And this team's even better in 2024. Now, they're going to have challenges, as Matt LaFleur loves to say, new season, new challenges. And there is a big step that you have to take when you go from nobody's expecting anything out of you. There's nobody that you're watching on the awards list. There's nobody that's expecting you to make the playoffs. You have a blank check. Nobody really cares about you all that much. We're already seeing from the end of last season, Matt Bowen, one of the most respected ESPN analysts, puts Green Bay as his expected Super Bowl winner going into 2024. We see Jordan Love on MVP conversations and as a key MVP candidate. Green Bay overnight went from 0 expectations to literally the highest expectations that you can have, from nobody's even watching this team to, for any sort of competitive, think they're going to be anything or compete in the playoffs, just completely slept on, rebuild, whatever we want to call it, to this team should win the Super Bowl and win the MVP. That is a stark contrast and something that they're going to have to deal with in a very quick period of time. The other thing that often happens to very young teams, we've seen it happen over and over to young players. They come in their rookie season, they have success. And what happens to players like that? They're like, oh, I don't have to, this is easy. I'm already having success in this league. Put it on cruise control. And what happens in year 2? Big slice of humble pie. And they get humbled. And then they have to sort of get back on track and be like, oh, okay, I do have to continue to work at this. Now, I think this team's built and wired pretty darn well, that they're going to keep working at it. But those expectations are going to be really, really tough. But Green Bay has every right to compete with everyone, period. End of story. Second part of that, do I want Green Bay to take all 11 picks? I guess I don't have a preference here. I want Green Bay to navigate the draft board in the avenue that they feel is best for the team. If they need to mortgage some of those draft picks to go up and get somebody, then move up in the first round or move up in the second round to get somebody that they feel is going to be a complete game changer for their team, then do it. If they need to move back in the first round, because a lot of times what happens when you see a team that moves back, right? They're sitting at pick 25. So Goody gets to pick 25. He looks up at his draft board. He's like, okay, all right, well, I've got 5-6 guys here that have almost identical or identical grades. We don't have any differentiator. So I can move back 5 spots. I can get to pick 30 and guarantee that one of those guys at minimum, maybe 2, are still going to be there. And I feel very comfortable with that. We've got them all graded in the same spot. Let's see if I can get back from 25 to 30, pick up a 3rd round pick. Maybe it's a next year's 3rd. Maybe it's this year's 3rd, whatever it might be. All right, we pick up a 3rd round pick. We move back to 30. Maybe they get to 30 and only 2 of those guys are off the board. They get to 30 and, they see and they're like, oh, we got 4 guys left. We got 4 guys left. And some team in early round 2 is like, hey, we want to get to 30 so that we can pick a quarterback and get that 5th year option. Maybe Penix is still there. Maybe Bo Nix is still there. So maybe they move back to 33 and the early pick in the 2nd round. And then they get there and maybe that quarterback's taken and all of a sudden they get there and then maybe they pick up another 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick. And now you picked up a 3rd round pick and a 4th round pick and you still got the same grade with the guy on your board that you did when you were sitting at 25. If they picked up an extra 3rd and a 4th round pick to do that, awesome. I have no issue with that whatsoever. That's great GMing. Again, same thing. It can work the opposite way. Goody might get to it might get to pick 20, and Goody looks up at his board. There's 2 guys left. All of a sudden, pick 20 comes, and it's one of the guys on their board and gets to pick 21. There's 1 guy left. All right, guess what you want to do? You want to start calling. All right, pick 21. Can we get to pick 21? All right, no, you can't. No deal is done. 21 picks, and the guy is still on your board. Can you get to 22? And then you hope to get up there to get that 1 guy that's still left on your board with a first round grade. So whatever they need to do, if that's trading up, if that's trading down, do it and pick up the best draft capital that you can get and get those guys that you can get and go from there. But if it's 11, you work again, you find good players and you figure out all the rest later. If we get to training camp and they've got 65 guys that are capable of making a 53-man roster, awesome. Sign me the hell up. I'm all aboard. No worries about that whatsoever. So again, and they're also in a spot where they've got a good roster already, where if they want to go from 11 to 7 or 8 and, but get better quality players rather than quantity, totally cool with that as well. So whatever they need to do to get the best value out of this draft, I am on board with. Most hated Minnesotan. Thank you, buddy. I've been really high on the Jacob signing since it happens. Thoughts on Jacob, specifically in the passing game, feels like a cheat code in waiting. Hearing Matt LaFleur talk about it this week and hearing Josh Jacobs, talk about it a little bit when he was in the locker room, I think those things get your juices flowing, right? I think Jacobs is in a situation where he hasn't really been. This is a fully functioning offense with a big-time legitimate quarterback, weapons all over the damn place, and Josh Jacobs has the potential to be a real beneficiary of that. And a lot of this is going to be dependent upon the offensive line. Aaron Jones, a lot of times last year, even late in the season, made a lot of something, sometimes out of a lot of nothing. That offensive line that was not getting anything for A.J. Dillon, a lot of times wasn't getting anything for Aaron Jones either, but Aaron Jones was making the spectacular happen. So I think, we'll see what this offensive line can do and if they can improve as a run blocking group. But I think the fact that Jacobs is just going to see hopefully not as much immediate penetration as he saw last year when he was with the Raiders, where their guys flying into the backfield left and right out of nowhere. And secondly, just a defense going against him that's going to have to be so honed in on the Musgraves and the Crafts and the Wicks and the Reeds and the Watsons and the Jordan Loves and that whole passing game. I think that's going to be a benefit, it's going to be beneficial for Josh Jacobs. Very easy for me to say. And I think the other thing, even if Josh Jacobs is an option as a check down, meaning you're going, touchdown to check down, and it ends up in Josh Jacobs' hands, man, that's a hell of a check down. That's a hell of a playmaker to put the ball in the hands on a little check down. And if the defense isn't ready for it, Jacobs is going to make you pay that way. So yeah, I think it's a signing that's definitely going to pay dividends, and excited to see how he fits within the offense. But I expect he's going to fit very, very well in the passing game, in the running game, and just not have to be that primary guy that everyone on the opposing defense is gearing up for game in and game out, and not having to focus on the passing game as much. Meaning that the opposing defenses against the Raiders could just put 8 in the box against Jacobs. They're going to be able to do that against Green Bay. Riley, who's your favorite linebacker to pair with Quay and McDuffie, and best 2 linebackers in the draft to pair with just Quay? Huge fan, love the podcast. Riley, sorry if you missed this earlier, but I talked about it. The one guy that I spent the most time on was Edgerrin Cooper so far. So the rest of those, like second, third, fourth round linebackers, are very high on my to-do list moving forward. So future episodes, I'll be able to talk a little bit more educatedly about those about those players. So we'll definitely get there as time goes on. But either way, I know Goody's going to be aggressive in trying to find linebackers to pair with those 2. It's not a great linebacker draft. I know that. At least that's what everyone's been very much complaining about. But listen, Goody's been able to find guys in the past, and maybe it has to be for a season, a guy like a Chris Barnes that they find in the, he was an undrafted guy, but maybe it's the back of the draft. Look at it's Ivan Pace for the Vikings last year. Maybe they can find this year's Ivan Pace, who was such a phenomenal find for the Vikings in undrafted free agency last year. You can find these guys. It's not always the guys that are taken early in the draft. Sometimes it's undrafted free agent. Sometimes it's a 5th or 6th guy. Look at what a Desmond Bishop was. So hopefully Goody can find his version of Desmond Bishop's, or what Minnesota did last year with an Ivan Pace. But as I mentioned earlier, definitely a fan of Edgerrin Cooper. I think there's definitely some pluses and minuses, as there are with every prospect, but I think he'd be a really fun pairing next to Quay based on the definition that Goody gave for what he wants in his linebacker earlier this week. All right, what else we got here? Lou, good to see you, buddy. Happy you were able to make it into the chat. All right. I think that does it for all of our member chats and all of the super chats. All right, Michael, let's take a look at this one. Does it make sense to make a trade with Denver for existing personnel to thwart Minnesota's attempt to move up to get a quarterback? Yes, this is one of the ones that I talked about with like the Patrick Surtain trade. If Green Bay could, utilize their first round draft pick and maybe some other stuff, maybe like a first round in Stokes and maybe a first and a third in Eric Stokes for Patrick Surtain. Denver might just hang up and laugh at you. And I could understand if they did. Honestly, Patrick Surtain is that good. He's a really, really good outside corner. If I'm Denver, I'm like, all right, well, I get a former first round pick at corner that can at least play that Patrick Surtain role for now. We'll see what he does. Maybe we can get him back into the form that he was as a rookie. I pick up a first round pick. I pick up a third round pick, and it gives me the opportunity to go up and maybe get one of those quarterbacks. That could be really beneficial for Denver. The bonus for Green Bay here is threefold. One, they get a premium, or I guess maybe twofold, but they get a premium position player in Patrick Surtain where there's no guesswork. Anytime you draft a player, there's some guesswork. No matter how good you think you are at drafting players, there is some guesswork that goes into that. Patrick Surtain, not much guesswork. Very cheap year left on his deal this year. 5th-year option moving forward that they'll be able to pick up, and then they could decide to give him that long-term contract down the road. But in the meantime, you get him on a great deal. You get an awesome corner to play outside of Jair. You get a person who fits perfectly within the Jeff Hafley defense. And then you also incentivize Denver to maybe move up over Minnesota. And maybe Minnesota doesn't get one of those top 4 quarterbacks, which isn't the worst thing in the world either. So I don't know that how much Green Bay would really be thinking of like, all right, let's try to circumvent Minnesota, because maybe what happens is Denver moves up and to number 4, and then Minnesota still finds a way to get to number 3. And you don't do the deal for what Minnesota does, but it could be like a extra bonus that goes into it if they are able to get Denver to move ahead of Minnesota as well. I have had no cold ones, Hunter. I just can't get my words underneath me today. So yeah, I've no cold ones. I probably just need a little caffeine, if anything. I only got like 4 hours of sleep last night, so that it probably has a lot more to do with that. I wish it was more just me having a few beers. All right. Yeah, Mark, that if they get 2022 Josh Jacobs, that's like the dream scenario. Just the absolute dream scenario. He was so unbelievably good in 2022, and like just powerful, big breakaway runs. Like teams just could not get him to the ground, making people miss. I talk about this when I break down running backs, and I talked about this in my scouting report for Jacobs when I did all of his run plays. But when I talk about a running back, at some point you're going to get on the second level with a linebacker or a safety, and you have to be able to make that person miss so that you can take the ball to the house and get that touchdown. And in order to do so, you have to have some, what I call like the PlayStation controller. You've got to have one of those buttons at your disposal. You can hit the X button. Maybe you've got a great stiff arm. You can be great on the sticks, and maybe you can juke people out. Maybe you've got a truck stick. Maybe you've got a spin move. Maybe you just have a turbo button like a Chris Johnson that you're just going to be able to run past the player. That's great. Josh Jacobs had all of them. Like you watch, he had a spin move, he had a stiff arm, he had a juke move, he'd drop people, he'd run away from people. He had all of it. Like he legitimately had all of it. And all I want is one. Like just give me one, and I feel like, all right, you've got that one move that you can go to, and I'm cool with that. He had all of them at his disposal. If they get 2022 Josh Jacobs, rest of the NFL, look the heck out. Gary, so yeah, if you see me like pause, and that might be a little bit too, I maybe feel like I've had a couple drinks or something. If you see me pause, part of the operation at the beginning, so just a long story short that none of you want to know, they take a part of my stomach and they wrap it around my esophagus to prevent the acid reflux from happening. It takes a while for your body to refigure itself out and recalculate. And you can't like belch as easy, and you can't like do some of that stuff as easy. So you get like sort of like a gas sort of buildup in the upper chest area. So if you see me like almost like hiccup or like take a second and things like that, it's because it's still working itself out. So more information than I'm sure that you wanted to know. But that's a little bit why you might see some of that stuff from me on the videos or on the live chats. It's just still recovering. It's going to take a few months to get everything back to normal, but it'll get there. I'm very, very pleased with where things are at right now, considering, again, I'm not even at a week and a half for my recovery from surgery yet. So being able to do what I'm able to do is fantastic. But yeah, we'll get there. Very much get there. Hunter, I love your love yous every morning. Thank you very much. Right back at you, buddy. And yes, very much have draft fever. This is where I get every year. It's so hard. And obviously, like through the course of the offseason, like I always want to do more draft stuff, but you get to free agency and you want to cover all the free agency stuff. And there's just not enough time in the day, unfortunately. But like I want to spend like 7 hours watching every one of these guys. So I just have to be smart of it, because I can't spend, if I spend 7 hours a day watching everyone, there's 20 days left before we get to draft time, or right about there, 25. I'm going to watch 25 guys if I do it that way. So I have to like be very smart with my time on how I'm going. Now I have great tools at my disposal to go through players and see the all 22 and pick stuff that I really want to see. I can, before with what I had, I would have to go and I would get all 22 tape of, BYU, and I would get their offensive tape, and it's 40 minutes and it doesn't have anything labeled. And I'm looking for a wide receiver or something. And I might have to go through, and a lot of the plays that I'm watching don't even have that wide receiver on the field or weren't even targeted. I now have the ability to go and pull up every single target for that wide receiver, every single throw downfield for a quarterback, every single red zone play for a quarterback, every single turnover play for a quarterback, every single touchdown throw for a quarterback or any player, every single explosive run for a running back or wide receiver I can pull up at a moment's notice. So I can work a lot smarter, and like in an hour, I can watch more of a prospect now and get a much better feel than what I used to be able to do in a day watching a prospect. It's insane because of the tools that are out there. So, and yes, definitely draft fever, and just love digging into all of these prospects. And what I know now about players in the next 2 weeks will be exponentially more. Like I said, I didn't sleep much last night. That's because, I'm spending 20 hours a day right now, going through as much tape as I can possibly get through. So it's a really fun time of the year, though. I absolutely love it. All right. Probably one or two more chats here. Yeah, definitely takes some time, Rich, but we'll get there. I'm very happy. Yeah. Now, again, the hope, Joshua, is that alcohol and spicy foods will not be an issue going forward. But yeah, right now, carbonated beverages, alcohol, spicy foods, definitely not on the menu right now. Off-season coverage is already going great and can't wait to even do more of it. All right. Not sure where we're getting this on Fatanu. I like Fatanu. Now, I have almost every other offensive lineman ahead of Fatanu. I have Fuaga ahead of him, Guyton ahead of him, Mims ahead of him, Fashanu ahead of him, Alt ahead of him. My guess is Barton's going to end ahead of him too. I'm just in the middle of that. Latham is not ahead of him. I do like him ahead of Lathan, but I like Fatanu. I have no issues with Fatanu whatsoever. There is, if you do go and watch though the Michigan game in their final game, there is some concerning tape on Fatanu, in my opinion, in that game. But overall, I had no issue with him. Actually liked, there's some Zach Tom to his game in all actuality. All right, friends. I think that's it. I think that's what's going to do it for us today. I got to get my kiddo over to soccer practice, so I'm going to go do that. I'll be back tomorrow, of course, with an all-new episode. Like I mentioned, Ross just did the Peyton Wilson breakdown, so nice, clean, easy 15-minute episode, easy to check out right after this. Really fun episode today, going through the Packers first round draft history and then predicting who the Packers pick will be in the first round this year based on that draft history, which we can narrow it down pretty well. So it's a really, really fun episode. Make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment. I'll check out those Pack a Day podcast YouTube memberships. Like I said, usually we try to get to as many super chats, but of course our members chats as well. Prioritize those a little bit. Get the members only episode every single week. You get the members Q&A every single week. So make sure to check those out as well. Appreciate you guys a ton. I'll keep recovering, keep doing draft coverage. We'll be talking soon before you know it. See you guys soon. Until next time. And as always, go Pack Go.